Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into a deeply intense, highly complex scenario. We're going to map out the anatomy of a massive global shock, one that forces us to really examine just how incredibly fragile our modern, interconnected world actually is. So, what if the unthinkable happened? What if the headlines tomorrow morning split the world in half, confirming an event that the international community just couldn't manage to stop in time?
Imagine waking up tomorrow to this exact question, no longer as some hypothetical thought experiment, but as absolute confirmed breaking news. What if America invaded Iran tomorrow? Just picture the precise moment this reality hits. It's a scenario that violently pulls the entire planet in, completely regardless of borders or time zones. But here's the thing. The very first thing that happens isn't what you typically see in Hollywood movies. We're not talking about some immediate montage of tanks rolling and jets taking off.
It's actually this, a heavy, profound silence of shock. For one terrifying second, before the shouting starts, before the financial markets totally crash, and long before politicians get on TV with their carefully prepared statements, there is just a silent, collective pause. Picture people standing in their kitchens pouring coffee, waiting for the bus in the rain, or walking through crowded airports. Suddenly, billions of devices, every phone, tablet, and smartwatch on the planet, light up and vibrate at the exact same time, synced to the exact same headline. Everyone, everywhere is reading the exact same unbelievable sentence, silently asking, how did it come to this?
Because the first wave of a modern conflict isn't just missiles or ground troops. No, it's a massive, overwhelming flood of logistical panic. Instantly, embassies across the globe go into emergency lockdown, frantically shredding documents. Airlines desperately divert flight routes midair to drain the sky above active conflict zones. Shipping companies are frantically rerouting these massive, slow-moving vessels. And the oil traders? Well, they're staring at their screens as if they're watching a heart monitor plummet. The global energy supply chain relies entirely on absolute stability, and the second that vanishes, panic buying sets in. This global network of logistics is where the battlefield actually begins.
And almost instantly, the information war kicks off. In our age of instant media, every single incident rapidly becomes a narrative battle. Governments will inevitably talk about defense, security, and strategic necessity. Critics, on the other hand, will immediately point to unchecked escalation, profound human suffering, and the certainty of long-term disaster. Social media feeds would just explode with competing claims, flat denials, blurry out-of-context videos, and totally unverified tactical maps. Finding the actual, objective truth becomes nearly impossible right when the world needs it most. I mean, one single explosion gets interpreted in 3 entirely different ways, and a single rumor can trigger massive global panic before anyone can even debunk it. But let's slow down for a second and ground this in reality. Let's move away from the geopolitics and the flashing screens and think about ordinary people. A mother in Tehran trying desperately to keep her kids calm, knowing the sky above her could change at any moment. Think of a student in a dorm halfway across the world, completely paralyzed by conflicting messages on their phone. A shop owner pulling down the shutters on a street that is suddenly terrifyingly quiet. A doctor bracing an under-resourced hospital for an influx of casualties. In any war, it's these people whose daily routines vanish in an instant. Grand strategy means very little when you're just trying to survive the day.
Which brings us to a really crucial reality. A human catastrophe is measured in fear long before it is measured in numbers. Civilians carry the absolute deepest weight of any conflict. They are the first to lose their sleep, the first to lose their certainty, and the first to lose their basic physical safety. And this happens way before official statistics or territorial gains are ever tallied up by authorities. The psychological toll of just waiting for the sirens to sound is a devastating burden all its own.
And that fear quickly cascades into a rapidly expanding humanitarian crisis on the ground. First, medical centers are instantly overwhelmed with casualties, right at the exact moment that vital supply routes for medicine and oxygen are abruptly cut off. This is followed quickly by massive displacement. Families desperately fleeing faced failing transportation networks, often finding themselves helplessly trapped on the roads. And finally, you have the long tail of trauma. This is what happens long after the breaking headlines move on. People lose their homes, their lifelong savings, their schools. It might not look dramatic on a screen a month later, but it is a massive generational loss that literally takes decades to rebuild.
Naturally, this localized suffering sparks a massive global panic. Behind closed doors, every single world leader would be asking the exact same question: is this the beginning of something much bigger? global diplomacy would practically collapse into emergency language. You'd have the United Nations scrambling in urgent closed-door meetings. Crucially, neutral countries would desperately try to act as mediators because for them, the stakes are incredibly high. If they can't mediate a ceasefire, they risk the global economy collapsing right around them. A conflict involving powers of this size simply never stays local. It's too fundamentally tied to dense alliances and the terrifying possibility that one targeted strike could easily trigger 10 uncontrollable responses.
And that global panic, it hits home instantly. Surging oil prices, skyrocketing shipping insurance, plummeting stock markets, these massive events translate directly into higher fuel bills at your local gas station. It means rapidly rising grocery prices at your neighborhood supermarket. It is a cruel reality that a war fought thousands of miles away crosses oceans and directly hits the wallets, the winter heating bills, and the kitchen tables of millions of strangers. People who never voted for the conflict, who never wanted it, and who are entirely powerless to stop the economic shockwave washing over their daily lives.
The sheer scale of this economic squeeze would pressure massive segments of the global economy all at once. Energy markets go absolutely haywire first, as traders panic over crude oil pipelines. But it doesn't stop there. It immediately chokes global shipping, heavily grounds airlines due to restricted airspace, bottlenecks complex manufacturing, and ultimately crushes everyday consumer markets. Our modern world is so deeply interconnected that an invasion of this scale is absolutely not just a military event. It's a profound, unavoidable economic earthquake that disrupts necessary goods everywhere.
Meanwhile, the internal domestic realities of both nations would be tested to their absolute limits. In America, intense division and fierce debate would erupt instantly. You'd have citizens flooding the streets, some furiously demanding more aggressive action, while others protest for an immediate exit. Politicians would undoubtedly use the crisis to attack one another, pulling the nation into a bitter partisan divide. Simultaneously, in Iran, the reality becomes one of immediate anger, raw survival, and profound grief. National resolve would harden significantly, and civilian life would be permanently reshaped by harsh emergency conditions. Ordinary people in both nations would inherit a historic shock they didn't ask for.
And the surrounding region wouldn't just be watching from the sidelines. The entire Middle East would be scrambling to brace for an immediate spillover. Neighboring countries would be under immense pressure to tightly manage their borders and protect their vital infrastructure. A massive point of concern would be global shipping lanes. If those maritime choke points are blocked, global trade basically grinds to a halt. Regional leaders know exactly how quickly isolated wars can widen. They'd be absolutely terrified that a single miscalculation, a stray missile, or a misread radar signal could trigger a wider, multi-front regional war.
Let's look at how this builds over just the first few critical days. By day 1, there is pure, unadulterated confusion. Information is just moving too fast to verify. Moving into day 2, militaries are aggressively scrambling for analysis, trying to predict the opponent's next move. By day 3, the sheer scale of the stakes fully sinks in, casting a heavy blanket of fear globally. And by day 4, the economic shock fully hits the markets. After these first 4 days, the future completely stops feeling predictable. Instead, it feels like a terrifying series of dangerous doors, leading to either a miraculous negotiation or long, grueling years of devastating instability. Through all of this complex strategy, all these timelines, and all the plummeting economic charts, there's a fundamental truth we really have to remember. Wars often begin in speeches, but they end in lives. In the midst of the most calculated maneuvering by state leaders, ordinary people on all sides simply want to live without the crushing burden of war. They don't wake up wanting conflict. They wake up wanting meaningful work, food on the table, safety, the ability to send their kids to school without fear, and the quiet dignity of just building a future.
Which perfectly captures this definition. Peace isn't just the absence of political noise or active combat. Peace is the presence of a normal life that people are allowed to keep. It's the beautifully mundane daily routine, the uninterrupted morning coffee, the safe street outside your window, the unbothered sleep at night. It's the simple privilege of making plans for next year and knowing you'll be there to see them through. A deeply unsettling hypothetical scenario like this is a stark, necessary reminder of how dangerously fragile that normal life really is. It can literally all be shattered by a single headline. So if tomorrow actually brought that unthinkable headline, we wouldn't just be reacting to a localized invasion. We'd be reacting to a massive turning point in human history, where the people least responsible carry the absolute heaviest burden. We've walked through the complex logistics, the sprawling economics, and the devastating human toll, but the ultimate outcome of such an earth-shattering event remains a terrifying unknown. So, what do you think would happen next? How do you think the global community would ultimately respond? Leave your thoughts down in the comments and make sure to subscribe to follow along as we continue to break down more complex global topics in our next explainer.